Welcome, everyone, back to the Chris Perish Podcast, episode 46. My name is Chris Perish. You say that I brought back a familiar face, but before we get to that, welcome, everyone, to the Instagram Live. I finally figured it out. And if you're on the X checking us live, welcome. We are new there, so thank you. As we have our good old friend Bastard coming up. What up? Buddy, I'm a Prime sub. Well, thank you. I now want a Prime sub. That sounds delicious. But before we get going, just a couple housekeeping things to get out of the way. Make sure you're checking out Turnbuckle Studios with the affiliation program, the Turnbuckle affiliation program right there. And you can go check that out at affiliationprogram.my.canva.site. And then also, checking out Rogue Energy. If you go to rogueenergy.com and at checkout screen, use the promo code Perish, you can save yourself 10% off. But you see two faces on the screen. We brought back Jack. Jack, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing about as well as Chris Jericho's last Posse concert.
Ouch. I don't know. I didn't see that. I'm just assuming ouch.
No, it was Jericho going about 110% for 8 to 10 people. It was amazing stuff. But yes, I am the host with the least of the worst fantasy sports channel. Right now, we're just doing worst fantasy show. We've dialed things back quite a bit during the season, but we'll hopefully be back with interviews and more wrestling stuff in the off season. Right now, it's quiet on those fronts. It's just the fantasy football stuff these days.
Yeah, and I do want to just let everyone know we will be talking some football this. So make sure that you adjust your fantasy football lineups now before it's all too late. Hopefully you don't forget about that London game as I did last week, and that hurt me. But before we get into anything, Jack, what are your thoughts of the London? We're going to see a game in Germany. What are your thoughts on those games, just as a fan or just as an NFL fan?
I like international games, but I'm also an international fan, so I'm biased. I live in Canada. I think we should have more Canada games. They're out here going across the pond to London. They're out here going to Germany. We can't get some games in Toronto. It's basically just an American city. But it is, I know it's funny, but it's actually because of the border laws. Certain players wouldn't be able to travel. So I think that's actually where it comes from. But hey, I don't know. They grease those wheels to go to Europe. They should be able to figure it out for Canada. But yes, I'm a big proponent of international games in general. Also, I'm just going to toot my own horn. If you were watching my channel this morning at 9:00, I got a lot of things right about this game. I play the Jaguars defense, DST. They scored a touchdown, did the special teams. Brian Thomas Jr., one of my most heavily drafted rookies this offseason. I have over 30% in best ball. I have him in my most important redraft leagues even. Both of my $150 leagues, I have them. And Hunter Henry. I said to play Hunter Henry above Mark Andrews today, and he has almost 100 yards. So all my calls are crushing it for this London game right now.
I think I would have played Chris Jericho's effort in his last show over Mark Andrews in most leagues.
That was actually another one, and I'm going to tell the story just because it's how fantasy football works, all right? So 2 weeks ago, and this is, if you're in the fantasy football community, it's like the wrestling community, where on Twitter, there's a very active core of the wrestling community that is not reflective of real life. And it's kind of the same thing with fantasy football, where we have this fantasy football community that's not reflective of real life. So 2 weeks ago, every fantasy Twitter analyst was like, this is the Mark Andrews week. This is the Mark Andrews touchdown week. And of course, Mark Andrews put up a fat old dud, goose egg. And the next week, not one person had Mark Andrews in their mouth. And I said, this is how fantasy works, y'all. Everybody was saying it last week, and he did nothing. And nobody's saying anything this week. This is the Mark Andrews week. And last week, which was the week I was talking about. He went 3 for 60 in a tutty, his best week of the season.
Just once, I want to hear in like a post game, like somebody kind of like a Mark Andrews when like, when they're asked us one of those silly questions of like, oh, you had a bounce back week from a poor performance last week. What do you test that to? I just want him to say, well, nobody was talking about me on fantasy, so I wanted to up my stock in the next year's draft. Like, I just wish I would hear something like that little bit more often.
There are some players that have done that in the past. They are few and far between, though.
Yeah.
It is very much like you'll see that sometimes from like a diva wide receiver, but usually a Mark Andrews type. He's just a quiet lunch pail guy, so he usually won't give you that kind of material, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unless a Baker Mayfield is roasting him on an interview.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Baker Mayfield being the number one fantasy quarterback just proves that nobody knows a damn thing.
Right. I remember earlier when we were talking about our predictions, not one of us even had Baker Mayfield even in a thought process. So a very weird year so far, but a lot of things stayed the same. Like the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. The Panthers are still the Panthers. And well, the Jets are just the team that always does the most, but really don't do the most.
Yeah, I mean, to a degree, I mean, the Chiefs actually look pretty rough right now and are dealing with injuries. Like, I don't know that they look like a solid bet for a three-peat. The Ravens look like they could destroy the Chiefs right now.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, and that's why you play the games, right? You just never know. Like on paper, it could look one way, but until you watch the games, you watch how coaches like make those in-game like alterations. They have those. Hard to always bet against Kansas City now. Like it's annoying. It feels like they're the Patriots 2.0, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to get some easy money, I mean, picking Patrick Mahomes to win isn't exactly the worst option in the world, especially if he's in the playoffs. But
yeah, but like I said, I mean, just on a surface level and on a paper level, I think the Ravens are clearly better than them right now in the AFC. I think there's other teams that can at least compete, like Houston, when Nico Collins comes back, can compete. The Bills, I mean, Amari Cooper gets up to speed, then the Bills are going to be right back to where they were. So I don't think it's as easy a walkover for the Patriots or for the Patriots.
For the
I
Chiefs,
said Patriots because they're the new Patriots, but
yeah.
The Chiefs, I mean, Kelsey's just that 1 year older, that one step slower. They have Isaiah Pacheco, their starting running back, on IR. They're hoping for Kareem Hunt and CEH to kind of pull it together for the running backs. They've got Juju Smith-Schuster coming back from the dead because Rashee Rice got his knee blown out by Mahomes, so he's out for the year. Like Xavier Worthy, he's a great little rookie, but he hasn't hit to the degree that he's not like Tyreek Hill or anything. So this offense, kind of sucks. And they're getting carried again by the defense. Mahomes hasn't had more than 20 fantasy points in any game this year.
I've always thought when people like take a Mahomes like early in drafts, I'm like, you are just making a mistake. Because I know the guy is one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best quarterback, just in the game right now. But from a fantasy standpoint, he's not.
There was a time.
Yeah, there was a time. But like he's one of those guys where he doesn't have to be a 30-point fantasy guy. For like if you were to just mix the fantasy to the real life and like. He doesn't have to be that number one fantasy player on the field.
Well, that's how it is now. And that's the thing now, right? But that's why I say there was a time, because I look at my main league, which is, like I said, my $150 league. When I pull up the history in this league, I won the first championship, like the first year that this league was inception. And I remember that year I was very adamant about I'm taking Travis Kelce and Mahomes double tap at the one, like at the first round. If you're at the back of the first round, like say you're in a 12-man and you're at 112, give me Kelce and Mahomes and I will figure out the rest, because then I don't have to have a backup quarterback and a backup tight end. Then I know that not only do I not have to have a backup quarterback, backup tight end, but I have two onesie positions that were top 5 every single week, and usually top 3 and often top 1. So it was such an outlier, and it happened basically 2 years in a row. And people have been chasing that dragon ever since. And so that's why now it's like, now if you make those picks, they're not the same picks that you were making 3 years ago. But 3 years ago, it was savvy to do that. And I even I'll tell you how well the move worked. The move worked so well that I did it twice, and the second time didn't even work, and it didn't even affect my team. I still dominated everybody that year. And it was because, hilariously enough, I took Tom Brady and Gronk when they were both in Tampa Bay, but I took them much later. So it was like I took Mahomes at Mahomes Kelce at 112 at 2-1 turn. And then much later in the draft, 10th round, maybe I took Brady, and then in the 15th, I took Gronk. And the idea was I have two crazy onesie, and the Brady Gronk one didn't work that year for fantasy. Gronk was a non-factor, and Brady wasn't that great for fantasy. I ended up dropping both, but it didn't matter because those were late picks, and you end up dropping your late picks anyways. Mahomes, Kelce hit, and they hit like mothers, and so having the ability to just carry so many extra running backs and wide receivers too, it gives you an advantage. So there's rare times where reaching up for the quarterback tight end works, but to be honest, it's 90 to 95% of the time you're right, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I think too, even if you wanted to look at that Brady and Gronk thing from one, we all know prime example of what you've been saying, there's a time where that just doesn't become as dominant as it used to be. But also, you're looking at Tom Brady now with a Mike Evans, with a Chris Godwin, with so much of a better wide receiver core than he normally is used to. So he's not going to even look at Gronk as much until you kind of get into those, well, we just need this, or if I don't have a play with the other two, because you're always going to look at guys like Godwin and Evans as your first look. I don't even care what the quarterback is. Those guys are absolute difference makers, especially a guy like Chris Godwin, who is I don't know if you would say, I don't know if you'd say this per se, but if you want, especially in a point per reception league, if you have a chance to get Chris Godwin at a steal, do it, because all that guy does is get you 3 points by catching the ball and getting you some yards after catch.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get him at a steal. So it's funny because everyone was wrong about the Bucs except Chris Godwin. This is one of those times where it's I'll give the fantasy community the credit they deserve when they deserve it. Everyone was on the Chris Godwin train going into the season. Now, hilariously enough, though, everyone at the same time is also tagging Baker Mayfield for possible regression, Mike Evans for possible regression, the entire offense for possible regression because of the coach change from Dave Canales leaving town. They brought in a guy that Baker was familiar with, so there was some consistency on that level, but nobody expected Baker to be as good as he is. But I will say there were lots of fantasy analysts that were on the Chris Godwin train specifically because this was the year that they were moving him back to the slot. And if you know anything about NFL football, and if you don't, I'll just really quickly, basically a slot wide receiver is the guy that plays inside. So more often than not, in 2 wide receiver sets, you'll have 2 wide receivers on the outside. And when you add a third wide receiver, a guy who's playing inside of those other 2, that's a slot wide receiver. Chris Godwin, traditionally, when he was coming up, played a lot of slot and dominated out of the slot. They said they were going to put him back in that position this year, and predictably he is dominating whenever he's in the slot because he is like an excellent slot receiver. Like he's an above average outside wide receiver, but he is an amazing, excellent. It's like Cooper Kupp. Like Cooper Kupp can play outside, but he's so much better when he's playing in the slot. And Chris Godwin fits that mold, and so that's why he predictably is dominating this year. The guys that, like I said, Baker Mayfield still being this good. I think Mike Evans, you either believe that he's never going to end a season without 1,000 yards, or you think it'll end you're going to be the guy that is constantly trying to predict when that end comes. But like, the other running back stepping up, I think, was more of a surprise. Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker in the absence of Rachaad White, who's been kind of mediocre. The defense has played above expectations. So there's a lot of things going right for the Bucs. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is Baker Mayfield has been way better than people expected.
Yeah, and obviously anybody who knows me knows I hate talking about the success of the Bucs, but you can't deny what they're doing right now. And I don't care what jersey you wear. Chris Godwin is always somebody I just enjoy watching play football, even if it's at
the Saints looked like they were going to walk away with this division after getting unanimously trashed all offseason, rightfully so, because Dennis Allen was being a huge D-hole all offseason, antagonizing the media and seemingly his own players, coming out, calling out Kendre Miller in press conferences over injury concerns. It was really bad. And also they are cash strapped, so they didn't do much to the roster. They made some decent draft picks, but there just wasn't a lot going on. And then the Saints all of a sudden look like, oh my God, what is this? The same, Derek Carr looks like Brett Favre out here, and Alvin Kamara looks like his old self, and they dominate for 2 weeks. But injuries are already catching up with them now. Your Carr's down, Olave's down, Taysom Hill's down. Kamara is, even though he's playing, he is dealing with a hand injury and probably some other injuries week to week. So the team already just beat up is the problem. That's half the NFL, I will say, this year. You said at the top of the show, why is it such a weird year? Go look at injuries. I did this before, I think it was last year, where it was like we actually saw a huge spike in injuries, and maybe it was the first year after COVID also. So there was the COVID year, and then that first year after where they kind of changed a lot of practice stuff and blah, blah, blah. A lot of injuries that year, a lot of injuries last year. And this year we've seen even more injuries. And maybe, I don't know if it all has to do with rule changes. Yeah, I think, like a lot of things in life, it's not ever any one reason. It's an accumulation of many reasons, right? Like a piece of sand by itself is just a piece of sand. But you collect enough pieces of sand together and you're going to build a mountain. You're going to, you'll collect into a sedimented item, like a rock. And it's then it's a problem. Now you have an actual problem. And I think that's really what is happening is you're compounding bad fields, bad practice, situations, protocols, just, general, because the way that they use padded practices and all that kind of stuff nowadays, the way that they run training camps and the way that they run preseason, where even the announcers are joking about it live on the air, how, the preseason is a joke now. And the real preseason is the first 4 weeks of the NFL regular season. And it's we're seeing that because we're seeing worse football in the beginning of the year, lower scoring. The scoring's been lowered across the board. We've seen higher injuries that I think maybe traditionally we've seen more in the preseason. So it's a lot of these changes I think are affecting the NFL. But then on a more personal level, there is a lot of unnecessary deception in the NFL, especially as it relates to injury designations for players. So, shout out to anybody watching. If you commission a fantasy football league, I am petitioning that next year we as commissioners need to be more flexible with injury designation. So all of my leagues, I'm going to be increasing IR spots to minimum 5, and I'm going to make it so that I don't care what the tag is. Your guy will be able to go on IR if he gets anything. Questionable, I don't care. Questionable, doubtful, NA, IR, out, like anything that they can come up with, your guy will be allowed to go on IR in my league, because I am so sick of this. I'll give you one that's hilarious. Will Fuller. Shout out to Will Fuller, who has been out of the NFL for 3 years and is still listed as questionable. If you look,
yeah, it's there are head scratchers. There are some
liars. Just say what it is. There's liars.
Oh, it's dumb.
Filthy liars.
But then you also get like an app, and I'll throw it under the bus because I legit hate Yahoo Fantasy Football.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's in my eyes the worst
garbage.
app. Worst app. You have a guy who he could break his neck, and then the team will just designate him as questionable on
and you can't
Tuesday,
do anything with
and
him.
you can't do anything, and you're like, it is as obvious as anything that he's not playing the next week. He is hurt. Like, don't give me this questionable. I question you more than I question what's going on right now, because Yahoo will not let you make a move. And then all of a sudden, it's like that little scene where, you're in black and white and then you turn around, it's all color. Oh, and it happens to be 5 minutes before game time. He's on the IR. Go figure.
Bro, Devontae Adams is a perfect example of this. This man's been questionable for 2 weeks, and then he gets tagged as out because he doesn't play in the game, and then they put him back as questionable, and it's like everybody knows he's not playing, and now suddenly he's on the Jets and magically his hamstring is healed and he's playing this week. Like, it's BS. Look at Cooper Kupp, another situation of everybody knows Cooper Kupp wasn't going to actually come back this week. And even though he's been limited in practice and technically could have come back because he wasn't placed on IR, I think everybody knew they weren't going to force him back against the freaking Raiders in a nothing burger game that meant nothing to them. And yet this man has been questionable for all week. So I had to drop, again, because it's Yahoo and it's garbage, I had to drop a player to take Kupp off my IR when inevitably I'm just going to put him back on IR later today when he gets announced as out. Like, I'm so sick of this crap. So, next year, all my leagues, if I'm commish, I'm making it so that all the IR spots, I don't care what the tag is, you can put your guy on IR. If he's questionable, he's IR worthy to me. Because IR, the NFL is just hugely effing around with these IR designations.
And it was funny because I'm on an app on the Sleeper League, and I drafted Nick Chubb with my last pick on there, knowing he was going to be hurt, but knowing that he was probably going to play in the second half of the season, right? As of yesterday, he was still in the PUP, so he was still eligible to be on IR. And I'm like, well, he's scheduled to get or projected to get the 9 points or whatever. And I'm just like, well, okay, I'll bring him up, not realizing, oh, wait, this prevents me from doing something else. So I put him back on. I grab another guy. And then as of this morning, I then dropped Antonio Gibson and then brought up the guy I wanted, because obviously I just had Gibson as a handcuff in case anything happened with Stevenson, who I also did not play. But now all of a sudden, I just got both what I wanted. And that's just an example of using IR to your advantage when Yahoo uses IR to your disadvantage every single week.
Yeah. No, Yahoo's the worst. So this has been one of my things too, of people ask me sometimes, how do you manage having so many leagues? I have 26 leagues, which honestly, there's sickos out there with double, triple the amount of leagues I have. So I'm always like, 26 isn't even that bad, all things considered, because half of them are dynasty, half are redraft, like half of the other half. So, a quarter of them are redraft, and a quarter of them are what I call bowl leagues. So they're basically tournament style. So there's Megala Bowl, there's Scottfish Bowl, I'm in Football Guys Bowl, and Warrior Bowl. I'm in all four of those. So they're important leagues to me, but they're not the same as they're technically redraft, but they're not the same as like your regular home leagues. I run my own home league that I've been running for years now. That's the $150 wrestling themed league. Last place gets banished for 1 year, so there's extra on the line for that. And then I got another home league that's run by this other guy. Shout out to Eric out there. He's an amazing commissioner. Used to run a league I was in that folded, and then when he opened this league back up, I actually decided to jump back in, and it's been running really smooth. It's a 3-man keeper league, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But that one is a lot of fun, and that's also $150. So it's like I'm in some pretty heavy leagues and stuff, but getting away from the point, the way I've managed is I've converted all of those leagues, almost every single one of my leagues, out of 26, 25 of them are on Sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, because Sleeper is so good, it actually makes it a lot easier to manage. Like one of the best features, pull up any player and you'll notice there's a thing that says availability in other leagues.
Yeah.
You press on that and it'll show every league that you're in, and it'll show whether you own that player, whether somebody else owns that player, or whether you can claim that player off waivers.
Well, yeah, Yahoo does that as well.
Yeah, but I know Yahoo does that.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to do and see on Yahoo. Sleeper has everything you need from like you press on the player and then everything. That's like one of the buttons. It's like it has that. It has their game logs for the entire season and actually for their entire career, which is insane.
Yeah.
It has their career stats, their season stat, like every conceivable thing that you could think of that you would want for information on a player, you get in basically one screen with Sleeper.
Well, and that's kind of where I was gonna go to. Like what I find Yahoo doesn't understand at times is that most people are in multiple leagues. So yeah, it gives you that information. But when you're struggling 5 minutes before a game because you find out this guy's hurt, chances are you might have that guy in multiple leagues. So you're gonna have to go change him. So you want that accessibility to like do things, whereas Sleeper, as you say, the accessibility for that particular reason and many other reasons, like it's easier just to do things and do things quickly on Sleeper. On Yahoo, they make you jump through hoops, or it feels like you're jumping through hoops just to do one or two things, especially with their redesign that they just did. And now it's so like, it looks nice, but it is just a pain in the rear to do anything on sometimes because you're just like, okay, it just feels like they move things around and it's not even for the better.
Although I'm looking at it right now. So I'm just on my one Yahoo league just for the sake of argument. I click on Bijan.
Yeah.
It gives me overview, game log for this year, which honestly, it's taking a second to load it. And then it gives me stats for this season and last season. And that's it. I have at the bottom, can't cut, research assistant. I don't know what the heck I don't use that. That's garbage. I know you can use it, but I've tried it before and it's garbage. I can put them on my watch list, and then there's like a thing to discuss them in comment section. That's it. Let's go to Sleeper just for the sake of argument. Pull up the guy Saquon here. So I've got summary, which is basically the overview. I pull up game log. It comes up immediately. I have 2024, 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018. Team. It gives me his team rank. So I have the offense, rush yard, rush attempt, rush touchdown, red zone percentage, how the team ranks in all of those categories. I have the depth chart, the entire depth chart, offense and defense for the team. History gives me an overview of his performance for his entire career, including all of his career stats. I can also see where he was drafted. It gives me that he was drafted 112 on August 29, 2024 in this league. And again, I can click on availability in other leagues so that I can see all the other leagues where he is not available, obviously, but I can either see if it says trade, it's because I don't have him. If it says drop, it's because I have him. So it's like, okay, cool. Now I know all the leagues where I have him. And then, yes, I also can put him on trade block. I can also put him on watch list. I can even make a league note. I can nickname him. I can do this, like endless. Seriously, any person I've ever converted to sleeper has like they might be resistant at first, which is just a human condition, and I get it because I suffer from it of not wanting to change technology when you're familiar with something. I'm very much that way. I still rock my PS3 and my Super Nintendo. But I can tell you,
bro, I still got an N64.
Yeah, mine's just in Hawkesbury right now. But yeah, every person I've ever converted to sleeper, they're like, "This is the way." Like
there are exceptions. Like just because it's new doesn't mean it's badass. It's just new too. Like that's
yeah.
But when it comes to fantasy
football,
this is not one of those exceptions.
Yeah, this is like it is legitimately like yeah, I can't even begin to think of an analogy. It's like sleeper is RoboCop, and every other app is like RoboCop from Wish. Like it's just a cardboard box with like gray painting.
I'll say that
oil stuck to it.
We were so used to the old like apps like ESPN and Yahoo, and we thought, hey, this was like that original Spider-Man, and then they're like, oh well, we'll do the NFL app. Here's like Andrew Garfield, and that's only because I'm forgetting the first guy, Tobey Maguire. There we go. Yeah. Tobey Maguire, in my eyes, was ESPN and Yahoo, and then all of a sudden we're getting the NFL app, and then like, oh, this is Andrew Garfield. But then Sleeper comes in, you're like, oh, Tom Holland, thank you for saving this.
Yeah, I mean, I have an affinity for the Tobey Maguire ones. Yeah. At least the first one, and the first two. The first two are all right. The third one is
the third one was trash.
The third one is so bad.
The only good thing that came out of that third one is just when he was doing that like stupid dance out of the building, and it was just meme worthy.
No. I mean, the memes are great now. Yeah. The actual reason is because that scene was so horrific.
It was so stupid, but it was like it stood out at the very least.
Yeah, the whole third one was a complete train wreck.
It was so bad.
It's funny. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could be in the room when bad decisions are made like that on such like a global level of like, something like an Avengers level or something like a Spider-Man level, you know what I mean? Or going into WWE, like a Bloodline level, some of the decisions that get made behind the scenes. I'm like, I wish I could know the whys and then, be disappointed at the lack of nuance.
Yeah. I will say though, Tobey Maguire did pretty good in the very last Spider-Man movie that we saw.
Yeah, I thought they all did. Yeah. I thought it's No Way Home. I thought they were all tremendous. I thought they all brought different unique aspects of their versions of Spider-Man to the screen. I thought Andrew Garfield was extremely lovable. I thought Tobey Maguire was very much like the kind of the mentor figure, and then
he felt like a Spider-Man's version of Yoda in a way.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is weird to say, but like
Tom Holland, the one part though, the one part that always kills me from No Way Home is when I forget the kid's name, but the kid that's friends with Tom Holland, his bestie in the movie.
Oh yeah.
He asked Tobey Maguire, like, so do you have a best friend in your universe? And he's like, yes, he died tragically in my arms after he tried to kill me. And then he's like, oh. Yeah.
It's okay because at the end of the movie he forgets about his best friend anyway.
He died in my arms after he tried to murder me. It was tragic. The way he says it is so funny.
Yeah, but by the movie's end, he doesn't even remember that he had a best friend anyway. So it all works out in the darkest of ways.
Oh no, he definitely remembers because he's out here having conversations with Doc Ock and stuff.
No. I mean, like at the very end when Tom Holland had it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, no, you're right. Holland. Yeah, that's sorry. Because I thought you were still referring to Tobey Maguire. I was like, why would Maguire forget everything? He got phased back to his reality.
Yeah. You did mention the Bloodline, so we will eventually get there. This is more so our wrestling show. But before we do that, just going to give everyone a quick little look at a quick video on what to expect on the week of Turnbuckle Studios. So check this out, and then we'll get back with a little bit of pro wrestling banter. And that is what you can see every week on Turnbuckle Studios. Make sure you're following us and as individuals, but also Turnbuckle Talk and Turnbuckle Studios for more and additional information. You did mention Bloodline, and it's very hard to not talk about Bloodline in pro wrestling simply because over the last Olympic plus cycle, we've had nothing but the Bloodline on our WWE screens. It's still going on. It's still in its, I don't know, maybe Paul Heyman says it's in the 5th inning. I don't know. I don't understand that analogy. I don't understand what he was meaning by that. But what we are seeing is a little bit more of a detailed, okay, how does Roman Reigns come back and go up against Solo Sikoa's version of the Bloodline? And it just seems like we're going back into original Bloodline versus new Bloodline, most likely at War Games, at Survivor Series. I find it's there's a lot to take in. I'm very curious to see how this ends. I'm very curious to see how this story ends. But I'm also really intrigued with how they bring back the Jey Uso. Does the yeet, no yeet thing represent the relationship a little bit? How they bring back Sami Zayn, if that's the plan. But before you kind of give an opinion on the Bloodline, what do you think the Bloodline story means for WWE and professional wrestling?
I mean, it's a tale of two stories. So I think it jumped the shark. I disagree with Paul Heyman. I think you got your 9th inning grand slam for all the marbles, and now you're spinning wheels. And there will always be a contingent of WWE fans that will love whatever the Bloodline stuff is that comes hereafter. And there's still ways I think they could reignite the story, but this has, to me, been an absolute jumping of the shark ever since WrestleMania. This whole thing with Solo's Bloodline, to me, doesn't work. This whole thing with Roman now coming back and the story that they're telling rushed, right? It feels like of all the stories that have never been rushed, it's funny that it feels like the Bloodline story is now feeling rushed because they're trying to set things up for War Games. And now you're having to essentially undo years of storytelling so that Jey will just kind of jump in back with Roman. So it's like this story has meant everything, in a sense, to WWE because of obviously it carried 2 WrestleManias. It brought The Rock back. It was the biggest thing in wrestling for the last 4 years. I don't disagree with any of those notions, but I think ever since WrestleMania, it's like this happens sometimes. I think me on a more personal level too. I'm going to use the show You as an example. And you're like, what the hell is this guy talking about? So if you guys have never seen the show You on Netflix, it was a show about a guy who's like a stalker serial killer. Irregardless of the intangibles of the show, the 3rd season was so good. The ending was so cathartic, and everything you could possibly want from the story that was told for the first 3 seasons that there was just no point in continuing the show, quite frankly. They did anyways because money, but they had reached the end of everything that could be done was done at that point. You know what I'm saying? And so this whole trope that like Roman, who really didn't do anything except, carry the title for an insane amount of time and then lose it to like the only other guy who's been on the come up for the last freaking decade, lose at WrestleMania. And then it's like, so again, it's like, it's hard. There's certain aspects of storytelling that I can push aside as a fan, suspending logic. But it's like, if this whole idea that Roman lost his bloodline because he lost one match at WrestleMania and then took some time off, and it's like the guy that replaced him was the dude that loses every freaking match. Like, Solo, and what has Solo won, honestly, since then? He literally just ate another pin at another pay-per-view. All this man does is lose at pay-per-views. I'm supposed to believe that he's the tribal chief in any way, shape, or form? Like, this is a joke. This is an absolute joke. And so, like, I don't know if you want me to spoil how I think they can save it.
Oh, no. It's not a spoiler. It's a prediction.
There you go. I do think that War Games, they could do something huge at War Games. I actually don't think it's going to happen, though. Now with a little bit of, like, foresight and hindsight, because when my original prediction was a couple weeks ago now. With a bit of foresight and hindsight, I don't think it's actually going to happen. I think we're going to get kind of a watered down, myopic version of the Bloodline. They're going to do very kind of standard old Bloodline versus new Bloodline, and quite frankly, I don't know where they're going with this story, and I don't know that I care anymore.
All right, can I trope what I think it will kind of what they do? So I think obviously what they're doing, Jimmy and Roman are trying to bring Jay back. Obviously, there's tension between all three parties with Jay leaving Roman because he was treated horribly. His brother turned on him, everything. I think they're going to turn to Sammy as well, and they're going to get a very similar approach, just based on how both Jay and Sammy left not only SmackDown, but the Bloodline in general. Then we're going to see Paul Heyman come into play, and the wise man, he's going to be the guy that brings them back together. They may not like it, they may not understand it, but they realize that it's best for them as individuals to do this. And because of that, they do the Survivor Series match at War Games, only for Solo Sikoa to get the win on Roman Reigns, because The Rock has officially noted as Solo's bloodline as his bloodline, because in his eyes, it was the only bloodline that was connecting the family. And when he showed that family tree prior to WrestleMania 40, that's all he's ever wanted. Then that is going to be the first seed that sets up the iconic matchup that we've been wanting. Last year, we didn't want it because we wanted Cody, but it's going to set up Rock versus Roman, and the winner is the ultimate tribal chief of the entire family tree.
Okay, we're kind of on slightly similar wavelengths, but what you just described is actually what I think I'm afraid is going to happen. Of like, I don't know how they're going to do that. Whereas I guess it'll just be like he comes out during the thing. But so my original idea and the way I thought that they were going to save this and the way I thought this would be genius was actually you don't need Sammy at all. You leave Sammy where he is. This is what you do. The Rock is the fourth member, right? So this whole thing that they're telling with Jimmy and Jay even kind of works of like, and Roman kind of said of like, I'll deal with this. Roman in his back pocket theoretically has The Rock as like backup. So why would he not use that and be like, look, I don't really care if Jay decides that he's going to join us. I think they're going to do their own thing, where like the Bloodline might mess with Jay and force him to join, kind of irregardless. Where he says, I'm not joining your Bloodline, but I'm going to fight at War Games on your side," kind of thing. But I think The Rock being the fourth man would really cement the whole thing, because then you have him turn on Roman in the match. And now it's 5-on-3, and The Rock is actually the tribal chief. Like, you can even do the thing where Solo gives him the Ula Fala, and they just put a huge beat down. Like, I think if you did it in the match that way, where The Rock was the fourth man on Roman's team and then turned on him in the match, I really feel like that would be a lot more impactful, a lot more of a betrayal. You could even set it up where The Rock hits him in the back with a chair, just like Seth Rollins once upon a time, right? Like, you could do a lot of cool things, but The Rock needs to be, I feel like, in the match, as opposed to just like doing the Rock thing where it's like he comes out mid-match. Like, I'm actually afraid that right now what's going to happen, the way it's setting up, is that it's going to be Cody as the fourth man. They're going to use Roman, Jimmy, Jay, and Cody to go against the new Bloodline, and then The Rock's going to come out in the middle of the match, and people aren't going to be sure exactly which way he's going to turn, and then he's going to turn on Roman's team, and then that's going to be the decide. Like you said, what helped Solo win. I think, like I said, it would be more impactful if he was actually the fourth man, backing Roman, being like, "No, you are you've always been the tribal chief," and then that's like the true betrayal of. In the match, he turns on him, and it's like, "No, I'm the tribal chief." And then you still set up Roman and Rock at WrestleMania, but I think you do it in a more cathartic way. Like I said, if he's the fourth man that turns in the match.
Yeah.
It's also been a minute since we've seen that. The last time we saw that was Dakota Kai, pretty much, when she did it at NXT, where she turned mid-match.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that in a hot minute. So I really think, like, and again, The Rock, he's so popular. If he comes back as final boss, like, people are going to cheer him just for being on Roman's side, and then to have him turn, I think, again, it would just be more impactful. But I think what you said is more likely.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that, and I actually don't hate what you're saying, because I do think a big turn and a big moment, especially if you use the Ula Fala, because what I think is really funny, I don't know if you've remembered, but Jay has used a blue Ula Fala in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that would be something if there was an agreement, and like, this is why I think it'd be not hilarious, but kind of intriguing, if Paul Heyman was the one that connects that original Bloodline back together. And I kind of want to say it's a tree, but it's not so much of a tree. But if it's like a way to unite, it's Roman accepting the Yeet, as he's been so anti-Yeet for the longest time. And that's something that Jey Uso is all about. And in return, Jey Uso gives him that blue Ula Fala. And then it's, within one Bloodline, they have one Ula Fala. With the other one, they have a different Ula Fala. But then The Rock holds the ultimate one, because he is the OG of the whole thing. I have a feeling that this Ula Fala thing is the end-all, be-all to the end of the Bloodline.
Yeah, if that's the case, I really hope they don't go that way with it, because then if you just have a bunch of Ula Falas running around, now I think you water down that gimmick. You need to have it just be that one, like, forget the blue one, like that. I think most people won't remember that Jay's done that. I think you just have to have the one, because look at this gaudy freaking crown royal belt that they just brought out.
Right.
Yeah,
if they had it in a purple bag with a gold string, that would have been awesome.
This awful gaudy piece of junk. that they're gonna display for a month every year now, as long as they do that gimmick. Like, oh my god, this thing looks like John Cena's spinner belt had an unholy demon ritual with the 24/7 belt.
You know what my problem is with that title? I don't mind the actual shape of what it was supposed to do. I just hate the millions and millions of diamonds in there, because then you're taking away what I've always loved about championship titles, and that was just the beauty of a great design. To me, there isn't design. It's just a crap load of diamonds slapped on something with a green logo of Crown Jewel that you barely can even see.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
But like the actual shape of the championship I love. Is just what's inside the whole structure of it. It's just like, it just looks like a giant pile of diamonds that James Bond is trying to put back into, or like something silly like that. Like,
I think it might be the worst title ever. Like, worst title design ever. Can you think of one, honestly, worse than that?
Well, I hated the 24/7. Not gonna lie.
I know, but it was so much smaller and simpler. Like, here's,
I hated those nickel tag titles. Like, yeah. I hated them.
I'll give you one that people hated that I actually loved, was Daniel Bryan's eco-friendly belt.
Oh, the hemp title? The hemp title's awesome, man.
Bro, that was I love that. I thought that was when he introduced the hemp title, I thought it was the funniest thing ever. I thought it was the greatest gimmick of all time.
Chris Best is saying that it looks like the AEW title on crack.
Yeah. Oh my god, AEW is just on crack these days.
Yeah. I mean,
I thought, what's funny is
maybe Brian that's what Alvarez, all their. No, I won't even go there. I don't.
I was gonna say, shout out to Brian Alvarez finally seeing the light and the truth. This man said, like, you can't just book for the sickos. Like, great, you're doing 400,000 a week on your ratings. Like, that's so I'm so happy that you're booking for, like, again, just the sickos out there of, like, and I don't know what this is like, Hogan versus Goldberg level booking, but like every week. Like, we're just going to give away our biggest stuff all the time for no reason. Like, how it's like, Ricochet's back and everyone wants to see Ospreay versus Ricochet. Random collision.
No.
Ninja moves. Go.
And don't get me wrong. Like, I'm personally just not a fan of the matches they have, although I do respect Will Ospreay and what he's able to do. It's insane. It's completely insane of what his talents are inside of a square ring. Ricochet, I have nothing but respect, because what that guy does is completely insane inside of a ring. But for whatever reason, when they're together, it's just not something for me. And that's okay. I'm not going to hate on people that like that stuff, but at the same time, if you're going to do what they do, please make it mean something. Please give me a story behind it to where when I see something like that, it makes sense. Every insane fight scene from a Marvel movie at least has a build-up. At least have this one.
Nope. Nope. We don't do that here.
Before we go, I do want to touch on one last thing, and that is what I think is one of the most intriguing characters in WWE right now, and that's Kevin Owens. And I find it absolutely hilarious or not hilarious, but amazing that with all this rumors surrounding his contract status, which, let's face it, there's nothing out there that confirms either scenario, whether it's re-signed, whether he hasn't. There's nothing out there. So let's throw that out of the window. But what we know is that he went years and years and years fighting against the Bloodline. Then all of a sudden he fights a good fight with Cody Rhodes in his realm to become the WWE champion. Now Cody Rhodes teams with Roman Reigns and he snaps. Then Randy Orton comes in and tries to play peacemaker. And he's siding with Cody, who has done these things that has pissed off Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens snaps. By chance, if Sami Zayn does realign with the Bloodline, does Kevin Owens completely lose it, and can you completely blame him for doing so?
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to talk about this in kayfabe or do you want me to talk about this in shoot terms? Because I think honestly, it's more interesting in shoot terms. Because Kevin Owens is a brilliant man.
He is he is one of the best professional wrestlers, maybe of all time.
I think it's underrated just how good he is. And one of the things that I've always loved that he does, and he's usually done it in a comedy style, is he will point out tropes in wrestling. Like there's that old one where of the clip of like where he's like, I didn't say your name. You can't come on screen until I say your name. That's how it works in pro wrestling. He does jokes like that where it's kind of breaking the fourth wall, and it's so ingenious. But what he's doing right now on a deeper level is so meaningful to me as a storyteller because it's something that I lament all the time. And when I say lament, I really mean bitch and moan. I I will complain to no end about characters that you establish within a certain universe and with a certain history, just completely ignoring that and just doing whatever for the sake of the story that you're telling now. So I think it's, and to kind of give an example of like, yeah, this whole idea that Kevin Owens would not just be okay with Cody suddenly teaming with his enemy of 4 years that basically tried to end his career, and then also being hurt that Randy Orton would take Cody's side over his. Like, all of those are actual natural instincts that like a human being or would have in those instances, and he's applying them to his character work, as opposed to just like in the Vince McMahon era where it was like, well, the good guys are good guys, and so he's just going to blindly ignore all the bad things Roman did to him so he can fight the good fight on his side. Like, no, that's horse crap booking and storytelling. And I've always hated that trope in professional wrestling and just storytelling in general, movies, TV. I don't care what it is. You can't, again, have the Joker kill off half of Batman's family and then do a story where Batman and Joker are working together without explaining why. Like, it's, you set up certain characters within a universe and you set up certain rules within a universe when you are creating the framework of that story initially. So it's, again, like you said, you've been telling this Bloodline story for 4 years. You can't just ignore all that history when you are now bringing characters back into the fold in the story in a new way. So I love that. No, they're not just ignoring Kevin Owens' history. In fact, they're actively using it to tell the story that they're telling now. That's how you do that's how you do good storytelling. Like, this is literally just elite level entertainment storytelling.
Yeah, for a guy that brings a lot of organic feelings from the fan base onto his character, and now he's doing it in more of an emotional captivating way, is just brilliant because he personifies that fan who gets mad when the product insults their intelligence, because that is the one thing Kevin Owens through history with his WWE run, and I say this because that's what I know of him. I didn't watch a lot of his stuff in the indies. I do know of some of the stuff. I just didn't watch a lot of it. But he captivates that essence of never insults his audience's intelligence. And for that, it's just so refreshing, remarkable, but he does it in a way where it makes the product better. And that just shows how brilliant of a performer and a mind he actually is.
Yeah, and the fact that he's, like I said, always done it in a comedy style for the most part, where it's been kind of with a wink and a nod and bringing the audience in on the joke. Now to be able to do it, the fact that he can also do it into such dramatic effect, I think, again, is just complimentary to how amazing of a performer he is.
Yeah. And to the chagrin of a lot of audience on social media who say wrestlers always need a championship to be relevant, Kevin Owens has done it for the most part all without a championship. So goes to show that sometimes you don't need a championship to be one of the best pieces.
Yes, but also I'm going to disagree with you because I think you have to establish someone like Kevin Owens. I think people almost forget, like, when dude came on the scene, remember how he smashed John Cena?
Yeah.
And like
Stepped on the U.S. title, held up his
what I mean.
NXT.
Like,
Yeah, I know.
They put him over. That was a huge push, and then he won the Universal title, even though he did end up losing it to Goldberg on some BS because they wanted to do Goldberg versus Lesnar at Mania for the title. Even though him and Jericho made way more sense for that program. Like the fact that he got that initial crazy push, got that one, like that kind of initial win over Cena that nobody expected, even though Cena then won the next two. Like he was established early on as a legitimate champion and then a threat to Roman's championship, even though he never was able to peel it off him because he was doing the Bloodline for 4 years. Like he's like a constant like gatekeeper in the sense of like he could always be a number one contender because he's always a legitimate threat to the world title. But you don't become that way without getting that initial booking.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying in the last 4 years, he has not held a singles title, but he has still remained in that thing because
he had the U.S. title for a bit, didn't he? Or did he never get that from?
Not in the last 4 years.
No, you're right. Or
he had the
whole thing with Logan Paul, but then he never won.
In the whole Bloodline thing, the only title he held was the tag titles that him and Sami won at WrestleMania 39 against the Usos. And that was one story. But with a lot of what he's doing on his singles and in the last 4 years, he's done it without having or needing a championship to still get
for
there.
Sure. But again, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but what I'm getting at is the way he was booked in his initial run. Like, he's not Dolph Ziggler, is what I'm trying to get at. You know what I'm saying? Like, Dolph Ziggler kind of had the type of booking where it's like he was never going to be. You never really took Ziggler 100% serious when he was going for a world title, I don't think. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, Dolph Ziggler was the Toronto Maple Leafs of pro wrestling. I never take him seriously when a championship.
That's why I'm like Kevin Owens, because of like the NXT stuff and the kind of Street Fighter almost personality that he has and the way he came on the scene, that kind of coasted into him being now like a veteran presence where it's like, I agree that he's been able to do it without the title. I don't think he could have done it without all of those, like that initial like build up of his character as like such a badass, you know what I mean? And like all the stuff with Stone Cold too. Like, I think again, it's like he was built into being the type of guy, and he obviously has the talent that he was able to like then capitalize. But like again, he benefited from like that early tough guy booking of like, we're gonna book him like a true badass in a sense, and he always performed up to that level and maintained relevance even without titles. I totally agree with you. Like, I'm not disagreeing, but I'm also saying like, just to say of like champion, because like he did have that initial kind of that first real NXT title run and then the Universal title run, and like was an established championship long before the Bloodline stuff ever happened, is what I'm getting at.
No. Yeah, no. I'm just saying, like, from like kind of the Bloodline like start out, he has done, I think, some of his best work.
Yeah, I do. I agree with you that like,
and
you grow in wrestling once you have had those first initial title runs that really establish your character, that you then don't need the title run to do your best work. I agree with that.
The Kevin Owens today, though, I don't believe it because he's a former world heavyweight champion. I believe it because if he's put in a position, I do believe he can be the next world heavyweight champion. And I think those are two completely different statements.
Yeah, but I think you believe that because of how he's always been booked. Like his historicity, I think, is, you know what I'm saying? Like,
you might be right. You might be right.
Who was kind of a good example of this is Undertaker. Like, Undertaker never needed the title, but if he ever went for it, you best believe he had a chance to get it.
Yeah.
even though a lot of times he ended up taking that L and putting over the guy that had the title at the time to really legitimize their title run, which was something Taker did often. He even, if you know, one of my favorite matches of all time is Taker doing exactly that for Kurt Angle, 2006, No Way Out.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And I I do have to kind of look at that, but I do think like in the last 4 years, he just hasn't needed a championship to do any of the big moments that he's been doing. It doesn't revolve around a championship to make it a big moment. And I think that's just something as a testament to how good he is, because when you can do stuff at big moments and you don't need a championship to do that, you can use human emotion. You can use just the organic aspect of the situation.
Well, mystique is what it is. But you develop mystique over time. That doesn't come out of nowhere usually.
Yeah.
Unless you're just like some, crazy athlete or big mamma jamma, like very rarely, and even those guys like don't always have the mystique aspect right away. I think he has it very much in the believability of his character, the way that, the way he is presented, the way that he dresses, the way that his character has always been with like the Street Fighter mentality and almost moveset, and the way that he throws his body around, just all of those things again, I think are things that people identify with.
Yeah. Talking about titles that kind of help you elevate into the next scene, without our beautiful social media titles, we can never let people know where we're going and what we have going on. But Jack, as I post your socials down here, can you tell us what we have to look forward to in your world?
Not much, but
goodbye, everyone.
I'm not taking it easy because I'm still doing 3 a week for the fantasy show. So that's what we've got going on right now. It's fantasy football season. It's NFL season. We've got 3 times a week, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. We're doing usually live, sometimes pre-recorded if I have to, but usually live fantasy shows. Monday is Hearts and Farts, so your studs and duds. Thursday is your start-sit matchups, and Sunday is just random questions from the audience and from Fantasy Football Advice Network. But yeah, you can find me at Jack Lucenay on all my socials, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, all that good stuff.
Awesome. And for everyone, you can definitely check everything I have out on my Linktree and make sure you're checking all the stuff out. It is amazing. Go check out everything over on the Turnbuckle Studios side. That has been episode 46 of the Chris Perish podcast. I do thank everyone, especially everyone on the Instagram and on the X Live. Please make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to all that. Hit those notification buttons to let you know, to alert yourself when every time the Chris Perish podcast is active. For today, for tomorrow, be happy, and remember, go Saints.
Yeah.